I'd like to welcome you to this week's video blog. It's a blessing to be with you. This week I want to focus on Christmas. It seemed only appropriate. You know, Christmas goes all the way back to Rome. It does not come from the Bible, contrary to what many might believe. In Rome, there were three different festivals that contributed to this day. The first one was Saturnalia. Saturnalia was in honor of the god Saturn. They had a 7-day festival in honor of this false deity. Another one was Mithraism. This was a cult or mystery of religion in Rome, and it celebrated the god of Mithra. It was a warrior god, and which was born on December 25th. It was very popular, matter of fact, among the Roman military. Another celebration that contributed to this day was the Feast of Sol Invictus, the open unconquered sun. It was sun worship, and this really, more than anything else, probably contributed to our modern-day Christmas. I want to read just an excerpt from the New International Dictionary of the Christian Church on what it says about Christmas. This is fascinating. Listen to what it says. It says, December 25th was the date of the Roman pagan festival inaugurated in 274 as the birthday of the unconquered sun, which at the winter solstice begins again to show an increase in light. Sometime before 336, a church in Rome, unable to stamp out this pagan festival, spiritualized as a feast of the nativity of the SUN of righteousness. So we find here that number one, December 25th was marked as a birthday of the sun. This is such an important truth and concept to understand that, again, December 25th does not have roots in the Bible, but has roots in pagan worship, specifically to the birthday of the SUN. And we see here that Rome in 274 marked this as the birthday of the sun, again, December 25th. Now, unable to remove this or stamp it out, we find here that this source says in 336, a church in Rome spiritualized it as the birthday of the son of righteousness and compromised by doing so. You know, we know that as Yahweh's people, we're to make a distinction. We are to worship as Yahweh instructs within His Word, and we're not to deviate to the right or left. And this is why we here at this ministry, we take a stand on this, and we show that we are to worship and we are to live differently in Yahweh's Word, and we are to remove that which offends, and we are to worship Yahweh as He instructs within His Word. Matter of fact, you know, the goal of this ministry is very simple, and that is to return back to what the apostles were doing, and the Messiah certainly was doing back in the early first century, and remove the traditions of men. And that's what we're doing. We do not worship on Sunday because, again, this was invented by man. We do not observe Easter or Christmas because neither of these have roots within our Father's Word, but go back to pagan observances. You know, Yahweh's Word says a lot about this, but number one, you know, we should always remember what Peter said in Acts chapter 5, verse 29. He said that we are to obey Yahweh rather than men. You see, we must first obey our Father in heaven before we obey man or his tradition. Jeremiah chapter 2, or 10, I should say, warns against following in the ways of the heathen. Matter of fact, it says in verse 2, do not follow in the ways of the heathen. We are commanded not to follow in the ways of the infidel, not to worship as they worshipped. It's amazing, actually, the parallel we find with Christmas to this custom, as we find in Jeremiah chapter 10, 2 through 5, I believe it is. It talks about how one would cut a tree out of the forest, deck it with silver and gold, fasten it with nails and hammers, that it move not. Or, you know, this sounds awfully familiar to our Christmas tree. And Yahweh says in verse 2, learn now the way of the heathen. And then he describes this day. Whereas believers, again, we're to make a distinction. We're to make a separation. You know, Paul talks about this in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. I want to read this to you. It says, be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness, and what concord hath Messiah with Belial, or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? You see, we're to make a distinction in our worship. We're to show Yahweh that we're to follow Him. We're not to follow Satan. We're not to follow Belial. We're not to follow darkness. We're not to follow the traditions of men. We're to follow our Father in heaven and Him only. And this is a lesson and, again, a principle that we share in this ministry, Yahweh's Restoration Ministry. We pray that you would support this cause and understand that as believers, we are, again, to return back to restore that which we find in the New Testament from the Messiah and His apostles. Well, I pray that this word's been a blessing to you. I pray that we would make a distinction in our worship and show Yahweh that we care for Him and we care about the worship that He's established and not that which man has established. Now, before leaving, I want to remind you about our very special webinar. This is Discover the Truth Talk Live. we would encourage that you join us. It's online, free to the public, free to everybody. We're going to be discussing the prophetic trends that we're seeing in the world today, including things like the immorality, the state of religion, the wars and the conflicts, and even our financial collapse. It's going to be a great webinar, and I pray that you will join us for this. Don't miss it. You're not going to want to miss this. Again, December 27th, this Friday, 7 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be myself, Elder Ella Mansager, Elder Pete Vaca from Yahweh's Assembly of Messiah, and also Elder Dwayne Wilson from Reach for Yahweh International Ministries. It's going to be a great, great webinar, and I know that you'll be blessed if you join us for this very special time. Also like to simply remind you about our Sabbath broadcast. We do this every Saturday, 1:30 p.m. Central Time. We broadcast free of charge our entire service. This includes the music, the message, the entire service. And we know that, again, this also would be a blessing to you, so that we would pray that you would join us. Now, both of these events, you can join us simply by going to yrm.org/live. That is yrm.org/live. So again, webinar, prophetic webinar, Discover the Truth, Talk Live, December 27th, this Friday, 7 p.m. Central Time. Don't miss it. And Sabbath broadcast is Saturdays, 1:30 p.m. Central Time. Where again, I pray that this word, this video blog has been a blessing to you. I pray that you would join me every week. And until then, may Yahweh bless you. Bye-bye.